Christmas Eve at the McKinley Gulf Estate sparkled like the cover of a magazine. Cinnamon candles, polished wood, and warm lights reflecting off a massive mirror. But standing in the middle of that room, I felt only one thing, a coldness that smelled like chemicals in a morgue. In my hands was a cream-colored box tied with a satin ribbon. Brielle, my younger sister, had said it was a special gift just for you. I lifted the lid, and the whole room seemed to tilt. A lifetime membership card to the dating app Last Resort Romance. An app advertised as a lifeline for desperate women nearing 30. Beneath it, a gold-embossed hardcover book titled The Art of Finding Happiness When You're Destined to Die Alone. No one spoke, but I could feel the way their eyes waited for my reaction, as if watching a rehearsed scene. Brielle laughed. A high, sharp sound that rang like shards of glass hitting marble. It's a TikTok trend. Sis. People rate it 5 stars for women who are past their expiration date. I kept staring at the cheap pink card. The wilted flower on it stared back at me like an accusation. My mother, Natalie, sat on an ivory sofa, posture straight like a statue in a gallery. Brielle is just thinking about your future. Don't be so stubborn that you end up a lonely old maid. My father, Samuel, didn't bother looking at me. He swirled his whiskey, eyes following the amber liquid as if it were more interesting than his own daughter. Beside him, his business partner Pembroke sat frozen in secondhand embarrassment. I closed the box, gently, but inside my chest, something cracked with a small, precise snap. 8 months. 8 months since I sent out the wedding invitations. Hand-picked paper, embossed lettering, and velvet ribbons tied over 3 sleepless nights. Evan had stood in the doorway when I finished the last one. Are you sure you don't want to call them again? I answered immediately, like it was obvious. They're my parents. There's no way they'll miss it. But they did. I stared at the 2 empty chairs at the ceremony. 2 wooden signs I painted myself. Mom and Dad. Surrounded by wild Texas flowers my mother once said she loved. Many years ago. I remembered every detail they had forgotten. You're not going to say thank you. Brielle's voice dragged me back. She tilted her head, her glossy hair falling at the perfect angle cameras loved. The 3-carat engagement ring on her finger caught the light so sharply I had to squint. I should have walked out of that place, like I had done for years, running before my heart could break again. I used to believe that if I stayed quiet long enough, they would finally see me. If I tried just a little harder, they would open the door they always kept shut. But tonight, standing in the middle of this polished, artificial luxury, I understood one thing. I had been running too long, and I was tired. Harrison Pembroke cleared his throat, trying to break the stone-hard tension. Perhaps we should move to the dining room. Brielle smiled like someone who believed she had won. She thought the night would go the same way it always did. I would stay silent. I would bow my head. I would endure. But she didn't know that in the moment I closed that box, something inside me shifted into a different position, a position I would not step away from tonight. Before I tell you the words that changed everything, tell me what time you're watching this video. I read every comment. If your family has ever hurt you with words they called just a joke, hit like and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but because I want you to stay until the end of this story. Now, let's go back to that night, when one seemingly harmless gift cracked an entire family open. The moment the entire table turned their heads, and I understood. They had never seen me as part of this family. The scent of oakwood and red wine mingled through the grand hall of the McKinley Gulf Estate, the kind of cold luxury outsiders mistake for warmth. But when Natalie sat at the head of the table, gin lifted as if balancing the entire room on it. I knew tonight would not be gentle. The sound of a spoon striking a wine glass, sharp, clear, echoed like a command. Let's raise a glass, because Brielle's wedding will be the event of the year. The whole table applauded lightly, all eyes turning toward my sister. Brielle smiled, her hand gliding down the satin of her dress, as if the stage itself had been created just for her. In the reflection of the crystal chandelier on the white linen tablecloth, I caught sight of myself at the bottom of someone's glass. I warped, blurred, small. Exactly the position I held in this family. I placed my hand under the table, pressing my fingernail into the edge of my chair. Not because it hurt, but to remind myself not to react. They're just waiting for 1 second of weakness. Natalie set her glass down, her gaze sliding toward me like a period ending a sentence. And what about you, Lara? Her voice was slow, drawn out intentionally. Are you planning to live with your plants in Austin forever? You're nearly 30. A few guests held their breath. Samuel lowered his face toward his whiskey, avoiding my eyes. The Pembrokes glanced over out of reflex, but said nothing. Silence is always the most elegant accomplice. Brielle raised a brow, like she was watching an old episode she had memorized. You still haven't dated anyone, right? You should try speed dating. Or those apps for people who are about to expire. Soft laughter rippled across the room. The sound pierced my ears like needles. I didn't laugh. And I didn't bow my head. I had been running for 28 years. Tonight I stopped. I set my knife and fork down. The clang of metal against porcelain loud enough to pull every gaze toward me. Am not single. Mom. The air snapped like a sparking wire. Natalie blinked. Samuel stopped breathing. Oliver Pembroke tilted his head slightly. Brielle froze, like a camera that had locked mid-frame. I inhaled, my voice calm to the point of being frightening. I've been married for 8 months. This time, absolute silence. No one moved. Even the soft jazz in the background sounded strangled. Natalie shot to her feet. You're lying. Her volume rose higher than shattering glass. If you actually got married, why didn't anyone in this family know? Brielle jumped in immediately, hitting her mark like a script she'd rehearsed all her life. Oh, please. This is my engagement dinner. Don't ruin it. I looked at her, not with hatred, not with anger, just the absence of belief. For the first time in my life, I returned every word they had used to hurt me. I repeated, my voice low. I sent the invitations. I saw it clearly. Graham Pembroke, Brielle's fiancé, leaning slightly toward me. His eyes are no longer distant. This was attention. This was suspicion. Samuel's voice cut in, gravelly. Invitations. We never received anything. I looked directly into his eyes. The first time in my life I dared not to look away. Because someone accepted them on your behalf. 1 sentence. But enough to chill the entire table as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Brielle scoffed, but her laugh trembled. You're making things up again. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because tonight, the truth would speak for itself. If you really got married, then where's the proof? Natalie's voice, shaking with both anger and fear, striking straight into the center of the story. I lifted the corner of my mouth. How far do you want to see, Mom? And in my eyes, there was only one message. I wasn't here to earn their belief. I was here to show them. To understand the storm tonight, you have to see the cracks that have existed for decades. The crystal lights on the ceiling of the McKinley Gulf estate shimmered gently, scattering delicate beams across the dinner table. But everything blurred the moment Natalie said that sentence. No one received your wedding invitation. Lara, stop making things up. Those words didn't just freeze the room. They dragged me backward into every moment of my life in which I'd been treated as the extra, the unnecessary one. Every sound around me felt submerged in water. The faint clink of a spoon, the soft creak of leather chairs, and the held breath of someone across the table. I didn't answer immediately. Because I was watching memories step out of the dark, like ghosts. A family doesn't break in one day. It fractures a little at a time. I remembered being 8 years old. That Christmas, Natalie seated Brielle on a red velvet stool. She adjusted every curl, turning my sister so the best light hit her face. I stood 1 meter away. When I stepped closer to join the photo, Natalie placed her hand on my shoulder. A gentle motion, but cold in a way that is hard to describe. Lara, move a little to the right. Your sister is the face of this card. I stepped back. 1 step. 2 steps. Brielle's smile glowed like the tree behind her. And I stood outside the frame. At 12 years old, I won first place in the statewide science competition. I remember the stage lights and the empty seats in the audience. Natalie and Samuel arrived late. Very late. She only said, "Traffic." No hug. No picture. A week later, Brielle won Best Cheerleader Smile. They arrived 30 minutes early and brought flowers. Back then, I thought, maybe I wasn't good enough. So I tried harder. But the gap between us only stretched wider. I understand now why I believed they would come to my wedding. Because all my life, I believed if I just tried harder, they would meet me halfway. 8 months ago. Austin. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by invitation cards, ribbons, black ink pens, and open FedEx boxes. The cream-colored ribbon slipped through my fingers. I tied each bow with the kind of care people reserve for sacred things. Not because my wedding needed to be perfect, but because I had only one chance to invite my family to witness the life I was stepping into. Evan leaned against the doorway, tilting his head slightly. "You're really stressed." I laughed softly, a fragile self-reassurance. "No, they're my parents. They'll come." Evan looked at me with an expression filled with things I wasn't ready to face. "I just worry. You're placing hope on people who never learned how to keep it." I didn't respond. I wanted to believe more than I wanted to be rational. The wedding day. Wind swept across the lakeside field, carrying the scent of wildflowers and water. Evan stood beside me, his hand warm. I kept staring at the entrance, where every guest who walked in asked, "Where are the bride's parents?" I lied. "They're on their way." Chairs with reserved for Mom and reserved for Dad sat in the front row, decorated with white flowers. I had placed them myself. Every minute, the flowers swayed in the wind. Every minute. No one walked in. The officiant whispered, "We can't delay any longer." I nodded. Another moment of swallowing disappointment. I said I do to the man I loved, while my chest felt like someone had left me outside the door. That night, when I checked my phone, there was no message, no apology, not even an excuse. Just silence. And silence sometimes destroys more violently than words. I thought they forgot by accident. But Evan showed me the truth. A month after the wedding, Evan went to the McKinley estate to fix an electrical issue they requested. He opened the equipment cabinet and frowned. The admin password is still the same." I froze. From when I installed it. 6 years ago. Evan nodded. If the room had been a little darker, he would have looked like a man staring at an unexploded bomb. "Lara, if they never changed the password, then the entire front door camera, the side cameras, and the 2 years of NVR storage are all intact." I stood completely still. Evan continued, "If you ever sent anything, the system would have recorded it." I remember the feeling vividly, a cold rush along my spine, both hope and fear. I whispered, "Meaning, we could see who received the package." "Not just who received it." Evan looked straight at me. "But what they did with it." I didn't open that truth back then. I wasn't strong enough. But tonight I felt like the entire room was counting down to the moment I finally dared to look. I blinked, pulling myself out of the memories. The dining hall snapped back into place. Crystal lights, red wine, sharply folded napkins, and soft jazz floating behind us. But now I saw everything clearly. Natalie was performing outrage. Samuel was performing disappointment. Brielle was performing victimhood. Only Graham wasn't performing. He was watching me. Directly. Sharply. Unblinking. Oliver Pembroke glanced over. The look of someone who had seen plenty of families break from the inside out. He knew something was wrong. They didn't realize that every word they spoke was pushing them closer to the truth I had buried for 8 months. Tonight, I'm going to open the door they think I'll never dare to touch. There are silences that don't soothe. They only reveal who is truly standing on your side. After the sentence I had just spoken, I sent the invitations. Every movement in the room seemed to lose its sound. Natalie stood so still she looked like a marble statue placed in the center of the grand hall. Samuel turned away, his jaw twitching slightly, as if truth was something he lacked the courage to face. The jazz music in the corner kept playing, but each note was distorted, choked by the thickened air. I inhaled. The breath felt heavy, like climbing a steep hill. But for the first time, it didn't make me tremble. The pain wasn't because they doubted me, but because I once believed they would trust me. I looked at my mother's face, the woman who had once pushed me out of the Christmas frame. I looked at Samuel, the man who only spoke to me when he needed a blueprint, never when I needed a father. And I realized, this room wasn't new. This feeling wasn't new. I had stood in this very place for my entire childhood. In the background, in the shadow cast by the spotlight that belonged to Brielle, in a space where my presence only had value if I remained silent. The more I thought about it, the clearer a truth emerged, sharp as sunlight across glass. They didn't forget my wedding. They never considered me important enough to remember. That realization was no longer a stabbing pain. It became clarity, a blade made of light. I placed my hand on the table, my fingers trembling slightly. Not from fear, but because I had finally allowed myself to say something I had never dared say. I had been left behind more than once. From childhood, all the way to the day I wore a wedding dress. My mother lifted her face, her stone-cold eyes sweeping across me, as if aiming to extinguish whatever hope was left. Stop imagining things. Lara. No one received anything. Each word pricked like a needle. But this time, I didn't let it reach the bone. I heard my heartbeat shift, from shrinking to steadying, as if someone inside me had just stood up, brushed off the dust, and breathed a new breath. They're trying to rewrite the truth. If I stay silent, they'll define my entire life with their words. I looked around the table at each face. Brielle, with the innocent look of someone pretending to be spotless. Natalie, with a gaze that wanted to erase anything she didn't approve of. Samuel, avoiding everything as if none of this concerned him. Graham, watching me closely, eyes narrowing, actually analyzing every detail. And I understood. If I didn't stand on my own side, no one else would stand there for me. A sentence rose inside me. My own voice, but older and wiser. Truth doesn't defend itself. People must do that. Natalie crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. If you really got married, where is the proof? Proof. The word hit the table like a stone. Samuel added, exactly. No one saw any invitation. No one received anything. You're making this bigger than it is. Around the table, small nods appeared. Not because they believed it, but because agreeing was easier than questioning Brielle. The old pattern replayed itself. One person does wrong. One person stays silent. 10 people side with the wrong thing. and only I am left standing alone. But tonight, something was different. I didn't feel small. I saw them shrinking. Smaller. Less powerful. Less frightening. Truth has a strange way of giving strength to the person who holds it. If they want proof, fine. It'll show them everything. If you're still listening up to this point, maybe you've felt something similar to what I went through. Leave the number. 1 in the comments so I know you're not alone. When liars begin to feel afraid, they're always the ones who speak the loudest. The air in the room was still stretched tight like a guitar string pulled to its breaking point. Natalie set her wine glass on the table, the sound sharp and cold as a blade. Lara, that's enough. No one received your wedding invitations. No. 1. Brielle immediately jumped in, her eyes shimmering in a way meant to look both hurt and righteous. Please. Sis. This is my night. Don't ruin it. It was a familiar tone. The tone of someone used to being protected. The tone of someone who knew every mistake could be pinned on me. Samuel leaned back in his chair, his voice low but heavy with accusation. If you're telling the truth, do you have proof? Every gaze snapped toward me, pulled by the shared gravity of an accusation. Pressure doesn't break me anymore. It makes me stand straighter. I didn't know when it happened, but both my hands were already resting on the table. My nails weren't shaking. My breath wasn't uneven. I simply looked at each person, slowly, steadily, and that was what made them uneasy. Brielle rolled her eyes, a small laugh escaping, half mocking, half panicked. She's imagining things again. She's doing this because she wants the spotlight. Like always. I didn't respond. I just observed. Natalie leaned forward, her lips curling. If you really got married without inviting your family, you think we're that easy to fool? I looked directly into my mother's eyes. No flinching. No apology. I sent the invitations. Just 4 words. But I felt the weight of them shift the entire table. No one dared interrupt, but no one looked away either. I heard whispers from the next table. Did the older sister actually get married? Why is the family reacting like this? What exactly is happening? Social pressure. The weapon the McKinleys always used to press me down, suddenly flipped and pointed at them instead. I saw it clearly in Natalie's eyes. Discomfort. She was used to controlling the perfect image. But tonight, that mask had begun to crack. Fear is the one thing you can never hide, especially from someone who's lived under it. Brielle leaned forward, hand placed dramatically over her chest, as if her heart were truly wounded. You're always like this. Always ruining my important moments. I stayed silent. You've always been jealous of me. Always. Others might not notice it, but I saw the tiny tremor in her jawline. Fear of exposure always starts there. Graham, the man I assumed would immediately side with Brielle, suddenly spoke quietly. Jealousy. That's your defense. Brielle froze, but only for a second. She snapped back into character almost instantly. I'm just telling the truth. But this time, no one nodded along. A few eyes shifted to me instead. Not with the contempt they had earlier, but with curiosity and suspicion toward Brielle. Samuel pressed his hands on the table, leaning toward me. We're not ending this until you prove what you're saying is true. He sat back, arms crossed, as if he had delivered a verdict. I looked at the 3 children that made up the McKinley family. The one who wanted to look perfect, Natalie. The one who wanted to be worshipped, Brielle. The one who wanted control, Samuel. All 3 felt threatened tonight. Not by me, but by the truth. I know exactly when liars hit their limit, when they demand proof. I remained still. I let every accusation slide off me like water sliding off a leaf. That composure unsettled the entire table. People fear most what they cannot read. And tonight, They couldn't read me. Natalie and Samuel exchanged a look. A silent conversation between two people losing control. What is she hiding? Why isn't she breaking like she always does? That question, not the invitations, was what frightened them. Oliver Pembroke, the powerful man with eyes sharp enough to read human nature, leaned back in his chair. He studied me long enough that the entire table went silent. Then he spoke, the voice calm but cutting. I believe this young woman knows exactly what she's doing, and I believe she has a reason for being this calm. Every head turned toward him. Graham nodded slightly, agreeing. That silence was heavier than any criticism they had thrown at me since the night began. I opened my clutch. My fingertips brushed my phone. Brielle frowned, whispering, "What are you doing?" I looked at her. A steady look. Not hostile, not shaky. Just the truth, preparing to be spoken aloud. I typed one word on the screen. Now. The message was sent. Delivered. Read. Someone at the table sucked in a breath. I whispered. Not to threaten, but to declare. If everyone wants proof, I lifted my head. Then I'll give you everything. The system in this house is waking up, and they are not ready to see themselves in it. There are houses that store memories, and there are houses that store evidence. The soft glow of the faux fireplace on the living room TV flickered, like a candle about to be blown out by a cold wind. Then, it went out completely. A sudden darkness swallowed the room. A few people jerked upright. A few lifted their heads. Even the sound of cutlery stopped. Natalie frowned at the pitch-black screen. Samuel, what's wrong with the TV? Samuel pressed the remote repeatedly. Nothing happened. Then a thin white line appeared in the corner of the screen. Remote access enabled a soft, huh? Escaped from the guest table. I knew exactly what was beginning. I lifted my chin and stepped forward. Dozens of eyes locked onto me as if a stage spotlight had just snapped on. No one needs to panic, I said. My voice is steady. The system is only doing what it was programmed to do. Brielle shot up from her chair. What are you doing? This is my engagement party. I turned toward her. Not arguing. Not shaking. Just speaking. You want proof. Dad wants proof. Mom wants proof. I inhaled. A light breath. Out of habit. So let this house answer for me. The screen brightened. Truth loading. A magnified FedEx receipt filled the display. No one said a word. No one needed to. The curved, delicate signature was so familiar I didn't have to look twice. Brielle McKinley guests leaned closer, whispering, "That's her signature. The date. It's exactly the day Lara said she sent them." Brielle launched into her default defense. I sign dozens of packages every week. Signing and forgetting is normal. But I saw her hand tremble. The kind of trembling that comes when a wall begins to crack. Samuel tilted his head, his voice dry as paper. "What's the sender name?" Immediately, the screen scrolled down. Sender. Lara. Evan Lockwood Content. Wedding invitations. No one exhaled loudly. The air grew so thick, it could have been broken by hand. The screen shifted to Gmail. Natalie gripped the edge of the table. Someone behind us muttered, "Oh God." A filter list appeared, with only one rule. Filter. If subject contains wedding, tutu permanently, created by Brielle's iPhone created on February 14th. Natalie stumbled a step. No, I didn't delete anything. I don't even know how to do this. I looked straight at her. Correct. You didn't create it. Brielle snapped back like a cornered animal. I was just helping Mom. She gets hundreds of emails. She can't manage them. I just filtered a few things out. That's all. No one believed her. No one bothered pretending to be polite anymore. Even the most composed guests were staring at her the way people stare at a widening crack in a wall. The more you try to hide it, the more obvious it becomes. The house still had more to say. When the video began playing, every eye shifted toward the screen. The front gate came into view, so sharp you could see grains of dust on the porch. FedEx delivered the package. Brielle opened the door. She signed. She smiled. Then, her face changed. Not surprised. Not confusion. But irritation. Anger. Contempt. She glanced around, like a criminal checking escape routes. Then she walked straight to the recycling bin beside the wall. She didn't open the box. She didn't check it. She didn't hesitate. She tossed it to the bottom of the bin. The loud hood made several guests flinch. Graham shot out of his chair. What the hell was that? Brielle. Brielle cried. The kind of crying meant to make people pity her, not see the truth. I panicked. I didn't want Mom to worry. I didn't want anyone judging the family. I was just trying to protect everyone. Graham shook his head. Protect them by throwing your sister's wedding invitations in the trash. For the first time, his voice carried zero affection. Gasps, stunned murmurs, and sharp inhales rippled across the room. Natalie whispered like someone losing her footing. Brielle, why would you do that? Samuel looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. But instead of apologizing, he aimed his anger at me. How long have you known? Why didn't you say anything? You let your sister face all this. And now, I cut him off. Softly, but sharply. You're blaming the wrong person. All eyes turned toward him. Samuel froze. It was the first moment he realized he was standing on the wrong side of history. But this was only the first layer of truth. Brielle ran toward the TV, trying to shut it off. But the screen didn't respond. Evan had locked everything. She spun around, eyes red, mascara smeared. Lara, you just want to humiliate me. You're jealous. You can't stand that I'm loved more. I tilted my head slightly. You call this love? She choked. The room held its breath. A guest said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Unbelievable. She did that to her own sister. Brielle's mask fell off. Oliver Pembroke, a man with the bearing of someone accustomed to making big decisions, stood up. He looked at Brielle with undisguised disappointment. We cannot allow our son to enter a family built on deceit and destruction. The entire room shook. Graham rose slowly, each movement cutting through Brielle like a blade. He removed the engagement ring, placed it on the table. The sound of metal against wood was a sentence of its own. I can't continue. Brielle nearly collapsed, her hands clawing at the edge of the table. Graham, you can't leave me. You can't. Graham didn't look back, but the McKinley collapse wasn't over yet. Natalie tried to salvage the situation. Lara, we can handle this privately. As a family. I met her gaze. Family. When I stood at my wedding waiting for those 2 empty chairs, you called that family. Samuel braced his hands on the table, his voice low but shaking. You're destroying this family. I shook my head gently. No. The ones who destroy it are the ones who buried the truth, not the one who uncovered it. A few guests nodded. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing alone. My phone vibrated. Evan. All files played. System cleared. I slipped the phone back into my clutch. The TV finally went dark. The noise in the room dimmed, leaving only sharp breaths, muffled sobs, and a silence heavy as ashes. I said, truth isn't the enemy of anyone. It's just what everyone in this room has been trying not to face. No one argued. But what I didn't know was that there was still another bomb sitting at that table, waiting to explode. When truth finally stands up, a liar's dignity collapses on its own. The TV screen had gone completely dark, but the echo of what it had shown still hung in the air like cold mist. No one touched their food anymore. No one dared speak. Only the sounds of short breaths, a chair sliding slightly, and a spoon trembling against a plate. Brielle sat slumped in her chair, mascara smeared in long black streaks. Natalie hovered behind her, one hand on her shoulder, unsure whether to grip tighter or let go. Samuel stood frozen, looking like a man who had just seen a crack running through a statue head always believed was flawless. A guest set a glass down, gently, but in this room, it sounded like a hammer hitting stone. 2 couples left first, saying nothing, then 3, then 4. The engagement party now looked like the aftermath of a storm, glittering remnants mixed with humiliation. No one wants to stand next to someone who's just been exposed. Graham, please, just let me explain, please. Graham was nearly at the door. He didn't turn around. Not once. Brielle chased him, grabbing his sleeve. But Graham pulled away, his movements calm, the kind of calm belonging to someone who made his decision long ago. There's nothing left to say. His voice was tired. Not angry. Not vengeful. And that, more than anything, broke her. You can't leave me. You owe me. I don't owe you anything. Brielle froze. The second collapse of the night happened right there, in front of everyone. A middle-aged woman, one of Natalie's longtime friends, approached me first. Her voice was low but sincere. You didn't deserve any of this. I'm sorry for staying silent earlier. I simply nodded. Moments later, one of Samuel's real estate partners bowed toward me, not them, and spoke loudly enough for my parents to hear. Ms. Lockwood, I'm very impressed with how you handled the situation. Then he handed me his business card. Across the room, Samuel heard every word. His shoulders fell in defeat. Another group of guests pulled on their coats, preparing to leave. Before crossing the doorway, they gave me a brief look. Just a second, but filled with respect. Good luck, Lara. You deserve better than this. That public shift of allegiance, the very tool the McKinleys always used to manipulate, was now turning against them. The people who once made you small now have to bow their heads in front of others. Natalie walked toward me with the steps of someone who had lost her sense of direction. Lara, you can't leave like this. We're family. I looked at her for a long time. For the first time, I allowed myself to look deep into the eyes that had served silence more than love. My voice wasn't raised. I wasn't harsh. Just true. Family doesn't delete wedding invitations. Natalie opened her mouth, but nothing came out. After everything, she realized the most painful part wasn't the scandal. It was the fact that I no longer clung to them. A man in a navy suit, the kind who looked like he came to sign contracts, approached Samuel. He placed a hand on my father's shoulder. Gentle, but his voice was cold as steel. After what I witnessed tonight, I think we should postpone our partnership. Indefinitely. Samuel went rigid. In a single blink, I watched him age 10 years. Everything he had worked to build, destroyed by the very favoritism he had cultivated all his life. I stood up. No one stopped me. No one had enough strength left to... The napkin slid off my chair. My heels clicked against the polished wood floor, each step sounding like a period at the end of an old chapter. The hallway air was cool. I inhaled, and my chest expanded for the first time without tightening. For the first time in years, I walked out of a McKinley room without feeling small. As I stepped into the long hallway, my phone vibrated. FaceTime showed his name. I answered. Evan looked at me, his eyes the only place that hadn't judged me tonight. How did it go? I let out a small laugh. Not bitter. Not sharp. A real laugh. It's done. I'm okay. Evan exhaled. I'm on the way to the airport. Send me your location. I'll come get you. I nodded. That was enough. But I wasn't the only one walking out of that room. I pushed open the large doors leading to the front garden. Houston's night breeze swept through, carrying the smell of damp grass and distant traffic. I took a few steps when I heard a voice call out, "Lara." Wait. I turned. It wasn't Brielle. It wasn't Natalie. It was Samuel. His eyes no longer held authority, no longer held sharpness. Only fear and something that almost resembled regret. I need to talk to you. Not every apology is born from remorse. Some are born from the fear of losing control. The Houston night wind swept across the lawn, carrying the scent of damp leaves and a coldness that wrapped itself around my skin. The sounds of cars from the street drifted in, distant, but oddly comforting in a way I hadn't felt in years inside this house. I had walked only a few meters when hurried footsteps rushed after me. "Lara, wait." I turned. Samuel stood beneath the warm yellow porch light, his breath breaking into pale clouds in the air. The expensive suit couldn't hide the exhaustion, or the flicker of fear in his eyes. For the first time, he no longer looked like Samuel McKinley, head of the family. He just looked like a man who had suddenly realized the thing he depended on would no longer stand there for him. This wasn't a conversation between a father and daughter anymore. It was between two people, finally seeing each other for real. "Lara," Samuel's voice was rough, like he had just climbed out from under rubble. "I didn't know things had gotten this bad." I said nothing. He stepped closer, his hand trembling slightly. "I thought you were fine. I didn't think your sister would." He swallowed a tired breath. "I never wanted our family to end up like this." This wasn't an apology. This was a man panicking. A man who had just lost face and lost the control he once used to keep me small. I recognized it instantly. "You know," I spoke slowly, each word cutting through the night air like a blade through mist. "Nothing that happened tonight hurt me." Samuel frowned, unable to accept that sentence. I continued. "The hurt started long before tonight. From all the times you looked through me like I was just furniture. From all the dinners where you asked only about Brielle. From all the family meetings where my name never once came up." Samuel's gaze faltered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't break. I simply stood there saying the things I once told myself to swallow so the family could stay peaceful. I was right here, in this house. I placed a hand on my chest. "But you never saw me." Samuel looked like the air had been punched out of him. His shoulders sank. He shook his head softly. It was wrong. It was the most honest thing he had ever said to me. But then, with a reflex born of old habits, he added, "What do you want now?" "I'll do it. Just tell me." I looked at him, directly, without blinking. "I don't need you to do anything." Samuel's brows drew together. I continued, "I don't want promises. I don't want compensation. I don't want you to punish anyone." The night wind swept between us, carrying away what little warmth remained. "I just want to walk away from the things that make me small." Samuel opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here to end it." That sentence hit him hard, like he finally understood his power over me had been cut clean through. I turned away. The stone path beneath my feet was cold, but my steps were not. The gate lights cast a soft yellow halo across the damp pavement. The night breeze brushed through my hair. The noise of the party behind me faded. Softer, softer, then disappeared entirely. I didn't look back. not out of anger, but because for the first time, I didn't need to. A charcoal SUV pulled up quietly at the curb. The door opened. Evan stepped out, coat in hand, his eyes lighting up the moment he saw me. "There you are." He placed the coat over my shoulders, the gesture so gentle I closed my eyes to feel it. "Let's go home." Those last 3 words, "go home," were enough to wash away an entire night of heaviness. I nodded. No tears, no dramatic smile, just peace, the kind no McKinley house had ever given me. My phone buzzed. A message from someone I didn't expect. But this time, I didn't open it. The first morning, without anyone calling my name, so quiet, I could finally hear the sound of my own breathing. Austin sunlight traced a soft golden line across the kitchen counter. I stood there, hands wrapped around a still warm mug, listening to the new silence in my apartment. No footsteps pounding down the stairs. No doors slamming because someone was angry. No sentences I had to swallow just so the family could stay happy. Just me. And peace. A peace that, for 29 years, I thought I had to sacrifice something enormous to deserve. Turns out, all I needed was to walk away from the place that made me small. My phone lit up. The message I hadn't opened last night. Still there. From Natalie. "Lara, I want to talk. I think you misunderstood." From Brielle. "You overreacted. We're still family." I looked at those words. No pain. No anger. Just the simple understanding of a truth. I don't belong in a place where love always comes with conditions. I walked out, and I am not walking back. I locked the screen. I didn't reply. Sometimes, silence is the kindest answer. I watered the lavender pot on the balcony. I opened my laptop, reviewing the files a new client had just sent over. Pans clinked softly in the kitchen. Evan was making breakfast. He walked up and pressed a kiss to my hair. "You look like you're breathing easier today." I smiled. Because I was. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anyone. I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. I just had to be myself. Not every family knows how to love, but every person has the right to choose where they are seen, respected, and loved in the gentlest way. If you've ever had to leave in order to find yourself again, I want you to know you're not alone. Tell me what you've survived. I read every single comment, and you'll find someone here who understands you. Please like and subscribe so I can share more meaningful and heartfelt stories with you. See you in the next story.